I didn't plan to go to prom. Not because of pride or boredom, just instinct. I wasn't supposed to be there. That night belonged to teenagers, dance floor awkwardness, fake eyelashes, and rented tuxedos. But something wasn't sitting right with me, and it hadn't been for a while. It started as a whisper, a glance too quick to catch, a laugh that didn't belong to me, 1,000 tiny flickers in the corner of my eye that, one day, decided to scream. I'd been married long enough to memorize her patterns. The way she stirred her coffee counterclockwise when she was annoyed. The way she'd fake a yawn mid-conversation if she wasn't paying attention. The way her phone would always be screen-side down, but lately it was practically glued to her palm. She was always texting. Someone, not friends. She stopped calling her sister. She stopped complaining about her mother. She stopped noticing when I came home late or when I didn't come home at all. And she had started laughing again. Those sharp, breathy bursts I hadn't heard in years. But the laugh wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to someone else. So I followed the laugh. I followed it into late-night meetings at school, emergency rehearsals, budget issues, last-minute prom plans that didn't require her to be home 4 nights in a row. She was staying late at school. And not once did she ask me to pick her up. The prom was held at the school gymnasium. I knew the layout. I had helped her design the lighting scheme 2 years ago, when she claimed the original planner was clueless. So I walked in before the lights dimmed, before the balloons were dropped from the ceiling, before the music got loud enough to hide mistakes. I planted a small camera behind the stack of AV equipment near the side entrance. It wasn't high-end, just enough to capture what was happening in the teacher's corridor, where the faculty took breaks, had drinks, adjusted their outfits before reappearing in front of students. I left. I didn't stay for the dance. I didn't have the stomach to pretend. The next day, I waited until she left to do cleanup duty. I sat in the living room with the camera hooked up to my laptop. And I watched. I told myself it was paranoia, that I'd see nothing, that I'd hate myself for it, that maybe she was really just exhausted, that maybe the laugh was for the students, that maybe she was still mine. What I saw made my jaw lock so hard I thought a molar cracked. At first, it was just normal. Teachers walking back and forth, staff checking their phones, grabbing snacks. But then there he was, the school principal, smiling like he owned the damn room. Tall, overly confident, too many buttons undone on his shirt. He looked like someone who thought rules applied to everyone but him. I paused the video as he looked directly into the camera lens, of course not seeing it, and gave this weird little smirk. That's when she appeared. My wife. In heels I didn't recognize. In a dress that didn't match what she told me she'd wear. Laughing. Tossing her hair back. And then it hit me, her hand. It brushed against his chest as they passed each other. Barely a second. But it wasn't accidental. It was a slow, deliberate graze, like a promise. 10 minutes later, they were back. This time, alone. No words. Just eye contact. And then the door to the break room opened and they went inside. Couldn't breathe. I waited. I stared at that closed door on the footage like it would open and reveal a prank. Maybe a surprise party. Maybe a scolding. Anything but what I knew was happening. Anything but her with him. In the dark. Behind a door that closed too softly for innocence. The door didn't open again for 13 minutes. And when it did, he came out first. Adjusting his shirt. Looking down the hallway like he was checking for something. Then she walked out, looking smug. Like she had just won. Like nothing mattered anymore. Not me. Not vows. Not promises or years or birthdays or miscarriages or holidays or that time she cried in the bathtub and begged me not to leave when I almost did. That laugh. That sharp, breathy laugh. She did it again as they walked out together. That was the moment something inside me folded. I didn't break anything. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just sat there in the quiet house we bought together. In the chair she picked out, next to the couch I paid for, under the lights she had to have, watching the woman I built a life with melt into someone I didn't recognize. That's where this story really begins. Because what I did next wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth. And the truth was going to rip the mask right off her face. She came home humming. I sat perfectly still. The laptop screen dimmed. The camera already tucked away in the coat closet behind a mess of scarves. She breezed into the living room like she had just come back from brunch with friends. Not from doing what she had done the night before. She kissed the air near my cheek. Didn't even touch me. and dropped her bag on the floor like it was her throne. Prom was magical, she said. The kids had a blast. I'm dead on my feet. I watched her stretch, arms above her head, back arched, neck exposed. A performance. Every move had a rhythm, like a snake shedding its skin in slow motion. I wondered if the dress was still in her car, if it still smelled like his cologne. I wondered how many times she had looked at him the way she used to look at me, before our mornings became quiet and her phone became louder. I asked her how the cleanup went. She shrugged, said the principal helped her carry the decorations to the storage room. That's when I saw it. The hesitation. A blink too slow. A breath caught mid-sentence. Not guilt. No, not that. She was calculating, deciding how much of the lie she needed to sprinkle in to cover the scent of the truth. Did you talk to him much? I asked, eyes fixed on hers. Not really, she said with that tight little smile she used on strangers. He's annoying, honestly. Always finds a way to slip out of doing the real work. Typical boss. There it was. The first real lie of the night. I almost laughed. Instead, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and watched her from the corner of my eye. She wasn't unwinding. She was watching me, like a chess player trying to figure out if I saw her move the queen behind my back. I sipped slowly, let her believe I hadn't seen it yet, let her pretend she still had the upper hand. And then I dropped it. So, the storage room, huh? She blinked. I leaned against the counter, letting the pause stretch until it grew heavy. Did you happen to take anything back from there? Like, I don't know, a dress change? A long private conversation? Or maybe 13 uninterrupted minutes of pure conversation? There was silence. Not shock, not confusion, just silence. Her face didn't flinch. She didn't gasp or deny it right away. No, she turned her head, slowly, the way someone does when they realize they've been seen through for the first time. Her voice was low when she spoke. What are you talking about? I smiled. I'm talking about prom. About the hallway camera. About you and your boss stepping into that room and locking the door. Her lips parted slightly, just enough to show a flicker of panic, then sealed again. She took a step back, arms crossed, weight shifting from one hip to the other. The room felt smaller. You went to prom? She asked, ignoring everything but the one sentence she could flip back at me. I didn't need to, I said. You made sure the main event happened off the dance floor. Still, she didn't crack.
No επάλεγει. Νωράει.
Just silence that turned into defiance. Why would you spy on me? She asked finally. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Because I'm not blind. Because your stories stopped making sense. Because the only thing worse than betrayal is letting it continue. She scoffed. You know how pathetic this looks? You hiding cameras like some obsessed creep. Watching me, snooping through my life. You made our life a lie, I said, voice cold now. I just wanted to see who you gave it to. Her eyes narrowed. So what now? You going to cry? Throw things? Threaten to tell the school? Go ahead. No one will believe you. You think they'll take a recording seriously if it wasn't cleared by the district? I blinked. The cruelty in her voice wasn't defensive. It was practiced. This wasn't her slipping. This was her true form surfacing like oil on water. She had never planned to explain anything. She wasn't scared of the truth. She had already made peace with it. But she didn't know the whole plan. She didn't know that I had already sent a copy of the footage to her best friend, to the school board's anonymous inbox, and to someone she hadn't talked to in years, her sister. She didn't know that this wasn't going to be a quiet little argument swept under the carpet of our home. This was going to be public. I wasn't just catching her. I was unmasking her. And I wasn't done yet. She left the room without another word.
No επάλεγει. No explanation.
Not even a fake tear. Just walked upstairs, calm and deliberate, like she was walking away from a boring conversation. Not a wrecked marriage. I listened to her steps fade into the hallway. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. That would have taken emotional investment. What I got was indifference, the kind that cuts deeper than rage. I stayed downstairs for hours. Not because I didn't know what to do next. I did. I just wanted to sit in the wreckage for a while. Let it settle in. Let the silence breathe, so I could hear the truth of it. The woman I married no longer existed. Maybe she never did. Maybe she was just an idea I kept feeding until it rotted. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, toasted bread, checked her email. She didn't mention the camera, or the hallway, or the break room, or the principal, or the fact that I now looked at her like a stranger had crawled into my wife's skin. I didn't say a word either. I let her talk about errands and groceries and how the neighbor's dog wouldn't stop barking. I nodded, sipped my coffee, and waited. By 10:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was her sister. "What the hell is going on? Did you really send me that video?" I texted back one word, "Yes." 10 minutes later, another buzz. This time, her best friend. A voice memo? Shaky, stammering, barely keeping up with the words. "Tell me this is a joke. Please." She wouldn't. She couldn't. What is she thinking? I don't even know what to say. I didn't reply. Then came the email from the school board. Just an automatic reply at first. Confirmation that the file had been received. But I knew the real response was coming. They wouldn't ignore something like this. A teacher, principal, a locked room, prom night, a camera. Tick, tick, tick. By noon, she finally spoke. She walked into the living room, phone in hand, face tight, not scared, angry, not because of what she did, but because she was losing control of the narrative. She wasn't the wife scorned. She was the scandal now. "You sent it," she said, voice low, dangerous. "You're trying to ruin my life." I looked at her, really looked.
No makeup.
Hair undone, her mouth trembling, not from guilt, but from pure fury. She wasn't afraid of being exposed. She was afraid of being publicly exposed. She could lie to me. She could twist it to friends. But not to the board. Not to the people who could strip her title, her power, her polished little reputation. "You ruined your own life," I said. All I did was hit send. She threw the phone on the couch and paced, arms crossed, muttering, "Do you know what you've done? You think this makes you the better person? You've humiliated me." "No," I said. "You did that. In a room with no windows. At a high school event. With a man you swore you couldn't stand." She stopped pacing. It didn't mean anything. That line. The most tired, pathetic, soulless string of words I've ever heard in my life. "It didn't mean anything?" I repeated, laughing once. Hollow. Then why lie about it? Why hide it? Why protect something that doesn't mean anything? She sat down finally. And for a second, just a flicker, I thought she might crack. That some part of her would remember being human. That something inside her would reach out, shake, apologize, grieve. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "You were boring. You stopped being interesting years ago. You didn't even notice how gone I was." My hands curled into fists on my knees, not from rage, but restraint. That's when I knew. This wasn't about love, or lust, or loneliness. It was about power. She didn't cheat to feel loved. She did it because she could. And she never, ever expected consequences. "You're not going to win," she said suddenly, voice back to ice. "They'll say it was fake. That you manipulated the footage. You'll be the bitter husband with a grudge. He'll deny it. They'll deny it. And no one will touch me." I stood up slowly, walked to the drawer where I had hidden the second copy. A flash drive. I placed it on the table between us. "Then let them deny it," I said. "Let them all try." She didn't move. I walked out the door, left the house behind me, and took a deep breath. She thought the story was over, but it hadn't even started. What came next would unravel everything. 3 days passed. The silence between us wasn't just awkward, it was strategic. Cold, careful détente. She didn't ask where I went during the day, and I didn't ask where she had been all those nights she claimed to be organizing prom logistics. We weren't a couple anymore. We were opponents in a slow, psychological chess match. Only one of us had already lost, we just hadn't signed the scorecard yet. Then came the knock. Not the angry pounding of a neighbor or the awkward tap of a delivery guy. It was controlled. Official. 3 knocks, firm, spaced out like they had meaning. I opened the door, and there they were. 2 members of the school board, both dressed in the kind of navy blazers that scream internal investigation. They asked for her. I stepped aside. She appeared at the top of the stairs in a robe and wet hair, clearly not expecting anyone. And for the first time, I saw something crack behind her eyes. Not guilt, not regret, fear. They asked to speak with her privately. She said nothing, just nodded and walked toward the kitchen, motioning for them to follow. I didn't need to hear what they were saying. I had already heard enough in that 13-minute hallway silence. They stayed for 40 minutes. When they left, they didn't say goodbye. She didn't walk them out. She sat at the kitchen table for 10 full minutes without moving. I stood across the room, waiting, not asking, just watching. Then she looked up at me, and something in her face changed. "They're suspending me," she said, voice flat. "Pending review." I said nothing. "And they're contacting him too," she added. Still nothing. That silence? It was the only victory I wanted in that moment. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, "I told you this would happen," because deep down, I knew that would let her off easy. What I wanted was worse. I wanted her to sit in the ruins of her own arrogance and feel it.
No escape hatch. No spin.
Just the raw truth. That night, she finally broke the stalemate. "You're proud of yourself?" she asked, not even looking at me, just standing by the window, arms folded.
No, irraplia. I'm disgusted.
She turned, defensive fire flickering. "You act like you're perfect, like you didn't play a role in this. I didn't lock a door with another man while pretending to plan a school dance." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you know everything, but you don't. You don't know how it feels to be invisible, to feel like your own house is a cage. You built that cage," I shot back. "Every time you lied, every time you walked past me like I wasn't even breathing in the same room. You turned this into a tomb. And you? What did you do to save us?" She hissed. "Nothing. You just watched me slip away and let it happen." I stepped closer, just enough for her to feel the weight of what I was about to say. "I watched you turn into someone I couldn't recognize. I stayed because I wanted to believe it was just a phase. But now I see it wasn't a phase. It was you. This is who you are." She didn't speak after that, just stared at me, jaw tight, tears fighting their way to the surface but never falling. Then she walked upstairs. Again. But this time, she didn't come back down. And that was the first night I locked the bedroom door. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I wanted to keep her out of the last part of me that still felt like mine. She had taken everything else. But she wasn't taking my peace. The next day would bring something even worse. A twist I didn't see coming. Because the principal, he wasn't going down quietly either. The call came at 7:42 a.m. I was still half asleep, lying on the couch downstairs. I hadn't been in our bedroom for 2 nights now. Couldn't stand the way it smelled like her shampoo. The way the sheets whispered a different story than the one she told with her mouth. The ringtone snapped me back to full consciousness. Unknown number. I picked it up without hesitation. "Mr. Lane." "Yes. This is Detective Weaver. I'm calling regarding an ongoing inquiry involving the administration at Eastview High. Are you available to speak?" "Detective." I sat up straight. "Yes, right now. Preferably. We'd like to ask a few questions regarding the video footage you submitted to the district board." So it was happening. Faster than I thought. "Of course. I can be there in 30 minutes. The station was colder than I expected. Not physically, but emotionally. The kind of cold that settles into your chest and makes you second-guess every decision you made to get there. I sat down across from 2 people in plain clothes, Detective Weaver, an older woman with eyes like she'd seen one lie too many, and a younger officer taking notes on a laptop. They were polite, professional, but underneath the politeness I could feel it. The tension of a story spinning out of control. They asked for the original camera model. The setup. If I had any reason to manipulate the footage. I told them everything. Every detail. They nodded along. Took notes. And then, the bomb. "The principal in the footage," Weaver said. "He's filed a formal complaint. Claims the footage is doctored. He says your wife was never in the break room with him. That it's an edited fabrication made to destroy his career." I blinked. "He's denying he was even there?" "Not just denying it," she replied. "He's hired legal counsel. They're trying to discredit the video entirely. Claims it's a smear campaign." The room tilted slightly. For a second, I thought I'd laugh. Not because it was funny, but because the sheer audacity of the lie was so wild, it pushed logic into absurdity. I leaned forward. So let me get this straight. He's pretending she wasn't there. Pretending the video doesn't show what it shows. What does she say? Weaver glanced at the screen, then back at me. We've attempted to contact your wife. So far, she hasn't responded. Cowardice. Disguise. Her usual tools. I left the station with a fire in my chest. Not just anger anymore. Not just betrayal. This was something sharper, resolve. She wasn't going to get away with this. He wasn't going to twist reality. Not when I still had the backup drive, the unedited version with timestamps, hallway footage leading in and out, everything. The kind of footage that lawyers couldn't dismiss. Not without dragging his reputation through the gravel first. When I got home, she was already dressed. Hair curled. Makeup perfect. Clothes too polished for a casual day. She was ready for battle. You went to the police, she said, without looking at me. I nodded. They called me. You had no right to get them involved. I raised an eyebrow. You had no right to lie in a school building and then act like the victim when it caught up to you. She walked past me, grabbed her purse. He's denying it. Completely. Of course he is. And you'll let him? You'll sit there and pretend it never happened. Her hand froze on the doorknob. I don't owe you anything, she whispered, not turning around. You owe the truth, I said louder now. To the students. To your colleagues. To everyone who trusted you. She turned then, slowly, her eyes empty of remorse. Truth doesn't matter. Perception does. And right now, no one knows what to believe. You mean you're gambling that they'll believe him over me? I'm betting they'll forget all of this in 2 weeks. Then she walked out the door. I didn't follow her. Instead, I picked up the phone. And I called the one person who would care about what the footage meant. Not as evidence, but as a pattern. Someone who'd had a run-in with that principal before. Someone who'd been ignored. Someone with a story to tell. What they told me next opened a door I never expected. And behind it was something even darker. Her name was Mallory Hart. The call only lasted 12 minutes, but it rewrote everything I thought I knew. I'd gotten her name from an anonymous thread I found on a local education forum the night before. The username was cryptic, but the story wasn't. It was posted over a year ago, before the affair, before the prom, before I had any reason to suspect that the ground beneath my life was cracked and hollow. She had written about a high-ranking administrator at Eastview High who had crossed boundaries, how he made advances under the guise of mentorship, how she brought it up to HR and was told to consider the consequences of throwing around accusations, how she eventually left teaching altogether. Her post ended with, "You'll never win if he's still in the building." I found her real name buried in a reply thread. A user who had once taught at the same school recognized her phrasing and called her Mallory. Took me 2 hours to find her on LinkedIn. Another 30 minutes to track down her contact information. One message. That's all I sent. She called me the next morning. At first, she was hesitant, cautious, voice tight with years of stored-up disbelief. But the moment I mentioned my wife and the prom night footage, something shifted. Like someone had finally found the missing piece of her own story. She didn't sound surprised. "Yeah," she said. "That sounds like him. He doesn't stop. He just gets better at hiding." I asked her to explain. "He waits for the ones who are tired, the ones who feel overlooked. He makes it feel like a rescue, like attention is affection. Then once you're too far in to backpedal, he makes sure you're too ashamed to tell anyone." And then she said something that hit me harder than anything my wife had ever done. "You're not the first husband to call me about him." I froze. Mallory went on. She told me about another woman, a teacher who transferred schools 2 years ago under mysterious circumstances. Another who quit mid-semester and left town. Quiet departures.
No fanfare.
But all of them had one thing in common. They were connected to him. I thanked her. Promised I'd keep her anonymous unless she chose otherwise. She said she might speak publicly if it came to that, but only if there was real proof. Not just scandal. Pattern. When I hung up, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not just about her. This had become something bigger. My wife was a liar, yes, but she was also just one move in this man's long game. A game he'd been playing with other people's marriages, careers, reputations. He counted on silence. But I had footage. I had a timeline. And now I had Mallory. I copied the entire video set onto a clean hard drive. Then I included the thread screenshots, Mallory's anonymized account, the name of the other teacher who had disappeared from staff rosters in 2023. I compiled it all into a folder titled Eastview Pattern Confidential. Then I sent it to 3 places: the school board, a local journalist I knew from college who specialized in education exposés, a private investigator I hired 2 days earlier, discreet, thorough, expensive but worth every penny. At this point, I knew what was coming. I knew she would come home and feel the shift in the air. I just didn't know what he would do once he realized his fortress was cracking. That answer came faster than expected. Because that night, someone tried to break into my CAR.IT was 2:17 a.m. when I heard the sharp clink of metal against glass. At first, I thought it was just a neighbor or maybe a raccoon. Something small, harmless. But then I heard it again, louder this time. The distinct snap of a car door handle being forced. I moved quickly, but quietly, looked through the blinds. There was someone at my car. Black hoodie, head down, hands moving with focus. Not random, not opportunistic. He knew where to check. Front passenger side. Glove box. That's where I kept the backup flash drive until I could move it the next day. I didn't think. I just grabbed my phone, hit record, and opened the front door. Not with a shout, but with silence. I wanted to catch him in the act. Wanted his face, his posture, anything. But he was fast. As soon as the door creaked, he looked up, just for a second, and ran. I caught a glimpse. Light-skinned, young. Not the principal. Not someone I recognized. But definitely not a random thief. He ran like someone who had something to lose. I didn't follow him. Instead, I checked the car. Nothing taken. Flash drive still there. But the glove box had been opened. He knew exactly where to go. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't about the car. This was a warning. A message. A subtle little nudge from someone who thought they were untouchable. Trying to tell me, I know where you live. I know what you're doing. Back off. I called the police. Filed the report. Gave them the footage. They nodded. Took notes. Promised to increase patrols in the area. But their tone said what I already knew. They weren't going to chase shadows. So I did. I sent the video of the attempted break-in to my investigator the next morning. He replied in under 20 minutes. Got something. Kid matches a name tied to the principal's nephew. Lives 2 blocks from his house. No priors, but he's been seen driving the principal's car before. And just like that, the picture became clearer. The principal wasn't just covering his tracks. He was recruiting help. Using students, family, anyone who could do the dirty work while his hands stayed clean. I showed the footage to her, my wife, or whatever version of her I had left. She didn't even try to fake concern. I had nothing to do with that, she said, arms crossed. Of course not, I replied. Just like you had nothing to do with the hallway, or the break room, or the lies, or the gaslighting. She looked tired, not sad, not sorry. Just worn out from trying to keep the walls up while everything crashed around her. What's your endgame? She asked. You really want to destroy both of us? No, I said. Just the part that's still pretending this never happened. She stared at me. For once, I saw something close to understanding. Not regret, but recognition. She knew it was over. And not just the marriage. The illusion, the power, the control. It was slipping. And I wasn't done yet, because I had just received a call from the journalist. She'd seen the footage, and she wanted to meet in person. That meeting would blow the entire thing wide open, but it would also cost me more than I was ready to lose. The journalist's name was Elise Brennan. Sharp, focused, no time for pleasantries, only truth. We met at a small coffee shop on the edge of town, the kind of place where people went to pretend they weren't being watched. She showed up with a slim black binder, a recorder, and eyes that had seen too many liars try to sell their version of the truth. I handed her the drive, the notes, the full layout of what had happened. Not just the hallway footage, but Mallory's statement, the former teachers who had vanished, and now the break-in attempt. She didn't flinch once. This guy's been operating for years, she said, scanning through a file. Always skating just inside the edge of, technically not illegal. Manipulation, subtle coercion, emotionally inappropriate behavior. But this, She tapped on the video still of him entering the break room with my wife. This is visual. This is timing. This is policy breaking. And if I can get 2 more sources to verify similar behavior patterns, just 2, this could explode. I sat back. I should have felt relief, like justice was within reach. Instead, I felt a crack open inside me. Because Elise wasn't wrong, it would explode. But it wouldn't just burn him. It would burn her too. And even though I hated what she'd done, even though I couldn't look at her without remembering the smirk she wore coming out of that break room, there was still a voice inside me whispering that this was once the woman I built a life with, the woman I cried with, the woman who once knew everything about me. And now I was handing her over. Elise must have seen the hesitation in my face. "You're sure you want this public?" she asked. "Because once this runs, there's no taking it back. People will talk. People will dig. You'll be a character in your own scandal." "I'm not the one who created the scandal," I said. "I'm just the one refusing to bury it." She nodded. "Then let's dig it up." 3 hours later, she called me back. She had already contacted Mallory, already set up a time with another ex-teacher she tracked through a private message board. And then she dropped a name I hadn't expected. "Your wife's department head. She's been watching this unfold in silence. She's willing to talk, off the record." I didn't say anything at first, because that changed everything. Her department head was a woman she admired, someone she used to praise during dinner conversations. She once said, "If anyone's got integrity in that building, it's her." And now she was coming forward. That night, I came home to find my wife sitting on the floor of the guest room.
No makeup.
Eyes red, shoulders slumped in a way that made her look smaller than I remembered. "Did you leak it?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "No," I said, "but I gave someone the key." She nodded, stared at her hands. "I didn't think it would matter," she said. "I thought it would be quiet. A moment. Something no one would know about." "You didn't just make a mistake," I replied. "You picked someone who does this. Over and over. You helped him keep doing it." She looked up. For the first time, her voice cracked. "I didn't think I mattered enough to ruin anything." That sentence, that broken, hollow thing she said, it made me understand something I hadn't before. She wasn't just reckless. She was empty, not evil, not vindictive, just lost. And in her emptiness, she let a predator use her to keep feeding the cycle. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not for what I did to you. I know that's too late. I'm sorry for what I let happen to myself." I didn't respond, because there was nothing left to say. The article was scheduled to drop in 48 hours. And when it did, everything would fall. But what none of us knew, not me, not her, not Elise, was that someone else had already taken the story into their own hands. And their version was much, much uglier. It hit the internet before Elise could even publish. A low-res video, uploaded anonymously, spread like fire through local Facebook groups, student message boards, and parent email chains. It wasn't my footage. It was edited, sloppy, grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. It showed 2 silhouettes entering the break room during prom night, clearly intimate, with time-stamped overlays and a mocking caption. "Eastview Prom Royalty. A principal affair." The sound was cut. Faces weren't visible, but anyone who had seen the original footage, or had just enough gossip in their bloodstream, knew exactly who it was meant to be. By the time I found out, it was already viral. I got the first text from a former coworker I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. "Is this real? Is that her?" I ignored it. The second text came from my neighbor across the street. "Heard something wild about the school. If it's true, damn." And then came the news alert. Not from Elise. From a clickbait tabloid site with the headline, "Scandal at Suburban High School. Principal and teacher caught in steamy prom encounter." The article was trash. No sources. Just wild speculation, blurry screenshots, a few anonymous comments from insiders, probably board students, and a final gut punch sentence. According to online rumors, the teacher involved is married, and her husband may have been the one who leaked the tape. I stared at the screen, my face blurred but still clearly me. The article had found an old photo of us from a fundraiser and cropped it in. We were officially the villains and victims of the week, depending on which direction the outrage swayed. She came downstairs an hour later, her phone buzzing nonstop in her hand. "They're sending it to my students," she said, voice hollow. "I just got an email from a parent asking if I'm being removed." I said nothing. "I didn't even know this version existed," she added. "Who did this? Why would someone—" "It wasn't me." I cut her off. "I sent it to a journalist. She didn't release it. Someone else got their hands on it." She looked at me like I just kicked her. "You expect me to believe that? After all this? After everything you've done?" "I don't care what you believe," I said. "But I didn't do this. Because this doesn't help anyone. It's chaos." And that's when it clicked. It was chaos. Not strategy. Not exposure. Sabotage. I called Elise immediately. She was already furious. They gutted the story, twisted it into a scandal circus. Now no one will care about the history, the patterns, the other victims. It's all just trash headlines now. "Can you trace the leak?" I asked. She paused. Then, "I'm trying. But if someone copied your footage and chopped it up," and that's when it hit me hard. I knew who had access, who had motive, who had everything to lose if the full story broke. The principal. He'd gotten there first. He'd taken my footage, warped it, weaponized it, and leaked it through a burner upload to poison the well. To destroy the narrative before it could take him down. To make the truth look like a cheap viral smear. Now, no one was talking about the victims. They were talking about the teacher who slept her way up. The husband who couldn't handle rejection. The principal who got caught in a personal misunderstanding. The truth? It was buried under hashtags and TikTok jokes. And I knew, in that moment, I only had one card left. The original footage. Unedited. Unfiltered. Undeniable. But it wouldn't be enough to leak it again. No, this time I was going to show it in public. In person. In front of everyone. The school board met every second Thursday of the month. It was usually a dead affair, budget reviews, calendar approvals, the occasional parent complaining about vending machine contents. But that night, the parking lot was full. Parents, teachers, students, reporters. Everyone wanted a seat. The gossip had reached a boiling point. The board tried to stay quiet, insisted the incident was being internally reviewed. But the internet doesn't wait for reviews. The viral video had done more damage than a confession ever could. It twisted the truth, blurred the lines, turned something calculated and harmful into a soap opera punchline. But I had the real story. I arrived 10 minutes early, wore a simple black shirt, no tie, brought a laptop, a flash drive, and the kind of calm that only comes when you've already lost everything. She was there too, sitting in the third row, not with me, not beside me, alone. She didn't look at me, didn't need to. We both knew what tonight was. The principal, on the other hand, walked in like he was attending a gala. Gray suit, pocket square, shaking hands, offering small nods of sympathy to staff and board members. He was a master of illusion, and this was his final act. But the stage wasn't his anymore. When public comment opened, the room went quiet. I stood. People whispered. Cameras turned. Someone from the local news raised a phone. "I have something that needs to be seen," I said, voice steady. "Not because I want to ruin reputations, but because this story has been twisted beyond recognition. What was leaked online was not the truth. It was a weapon, designed to distract from the real issue. Abuse of power, manipulation, and the protection of a man who's been doing this for years." The chairperson hesitated. "Sir, we're not." I interrupted. "This isn't conjecture. It's evidence." Then I plugged in the flash drive, and I played it. The original footage. Clean. Unedited. Time-stamped. Multiple angles. Hallway to break room. The full 13 minutes.
No commentary.
No music.
No captions.
Just reality. The room went silent. No one moved. When it ended, I said nothing. But the gasps, the hushed mutters, the looks of horror, those said everything. The principal stood up, red-faced, lips parted like he wanted to object. But no words came out. He stared at the board, at the room, at her. She wouldn't meet his gaze. And that, more than the footage, was what destroyed him. Because the story had changed. He wasn't a victim of gossip. He was the architect of it. The board recessed immediately. The superintendent announced a formal investigation would begin the next morning. Paid leave order was issued. Security escorted him out the side door before anyone could get to him. My wife, she left quietly. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. This wasn't about her anymore. Outside, people clapped me on the back, thanked me, told me I did the right thing. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt empty, not because I missed her, but because I realized how far someone could fall while you're standing right next to them. In the days that followed, Mallory's story ran alongside two others. Teachers, brave enough now to speak. Elisa's article reclaimed the narrative. Truth started to rise from the ashes of spectacle. My wife resigned before the investigation reached her. She didn't fight it, didn't leave a note, just packed a suitcase and left one afternoon.
No goodbye.
And honestly, I didn't need one. This story isn't about closure, or vengeance, or even justice. It's about clarity. The moment you stop lying to yourself. The moment you stop hoping someone will become the version you made up in your head. The moment you realize the person you love may not be cruel by accident. Sometimes they choose it, and if you ignore that, they'll choose it again. So here's my advice. If you feel the ground shifting beneath you, don't wait for the earthquake. Start walking before the roof caves in.